Hi, I'm Paris. And though I made it back from the Wheeler Peak trail hike, I did not make it to the top of Wheeler Peak. In fact, something I said at the end of my last video where I was standing up at Williams Lake about halfway into that hike, something that I said turned out to sadly be the case. So this is a beautiful spot to hike to. For people going to Wheeler Peak, this is like their bonus prize. For me, I think it may have to be my consolation prize. So this video is about what happened after I left Williams Lake and started back down, which you would think would be the easy part of the hike, but not necessarily with my knees. So I was already tired from the climb, just the 2 miles and the 1,100 feet or so in. That took a lot of my energy out, and I went through one entire battery of the Hypershell, the exoskeleton I was wearing to help get my legs going. I ended up using one battery, and I only had two just to get to that point. So put the new battery in and I started back down. I put it on maximum assist from the start because I knew it was going to be rough. And though the exoskeleton doesn't really help when you're going down, it doesn't, you don't really feel the benefit like going up where it helps to lift the legs. Going down, it doesn't really seem to do much. But what it does do is once you're walking with some rhythm, it kind of kicks your leg out in front of you, like, let's keep going. And I did find that helpful because there were times it was hard to keep going. I was really wiped out, which I didn't understand because it hadn't been that long of a hike, just the 2.5 miles in and coming back out. I was relying on the Hypershell to throw my legs out so I could take another step. So it took me about an hour or so to get the 2.5 miles back down to the chairlift, down at the bottom of the ski run, back down to around 10,000 feet elevation. And when I got down there, battery ran out. So, oh, at least it got me down, you back down to that point. And so I took the device off and had some water and sat and rested. And I had to get to the car. I was maybe 10 minutes I took. And when I got up to go just, less than a quarter mile to where the car was parked, up a slight incline to get up to the parking lot, I just could not believe the fatigue that I felt. It without the Hypershell helping to throw the legs forward, I was having trouble coming up with the energy to do that myself. And suddenly the Hypershell, I had it over my shoulder. It felt so heavy, like, oh, now I got to carry this thing up the hill. You don't notice it as much when it's on your waist, but when you're actually carrying it, it's like I don't need any extra weight. I just really wiped myself out doing this climb, which was only about 4.5, 5 miles round trip. That shouldn't wear me out. And okay, it was admittedly about 1,100 feet elevation gain, but just the previous month in Oklahoma, I had done Black Mesa, which is 8 miles round trip and the better part of 1,000 feet elevation gain. So I didn't understand what was going on. Um, but trying to go up the hill, the last part to get to the car, I had stopped twice. Once I had to sit on a rock and put the pack had some water in it, and the Hypershell, and actually rest and recover before doing the next 50, 60 feet up to get up to where it was level and getting to the car. So it was very disappointing. And I said to myself at the time, there's no way I can come back tomorrow and do this climb. I am wiped out just doing half the climb and the easier half at that. So I went and checked into the hotel. There are a couple that stay open year round, even when there isn't any skiing. And it was a very nice place. It had a little river that ran along the back. So that sound came in the window. So it was very nice. And ordinarily, it would have been a very uplifting kind of place to stay. But I was so depressed because having this terrible experience of I didn't even get a chance. I didn't even take the chance to actually try to climb to the top because I could see with the fatigue that I had just from the part that I did that if I had tried to go up to the top, I'd have still been up there because there was no way I was getting back down. So, and I didn't want to experiment both with the hyper shell and with how I was feeling that I might, need somebody's help carrying me down the mountain. So that's not fair to other people. So I decided I can't do that. I just can't do this, which means if I can't do this, there are other peaks I'd like to go up to, the highest points in Arizona, Nevada, maybe even someday California, the highest point in the lower 48. I can't do those things. And my bucket list climb to Everest Base Camp with my brother, something we've been talking about for a couple of years now. Not any closer to doing it, but still would like to think it's something that we could do. Not climbing Mount Everest, just going and climbing to base camp, which is where people who are climbing Mount Everest, that's where they go to start, down to the very bottom of the mountain. But at least you can be on Mount Everest and have that experience, be around all the climbers, people who are going to go to the top. It'd really be something I would love to do that. How am I going to do that when I can't manage this? Now I realized, okay, I started this climb at 10,000 feet. So I knew the altitude could be part of the issue, but it just the degree of the fatigue that I felt made me think, well, if I go to 10,000 feet and this is the fatigue that I feel, then forget doing anything over 10,000 feet. I just can't do it. So I felt very depressed for the rest of that day and through that night. The next morning, woke up depressed still, even though I had slept pretty well because I managed about a 6 hour stretch without having to get up and pee, which usually it's every hour and a half during the night for me. And I didn't know it at that time, but that was actually a clue as to some mistakes that I had made in attempting this climb that actually might turn out I didn't have to give up the idea of doing these climbs. But at the time, I didn't realize it. And I was just depressed. I didn't even go back up. I thought, well, I'll go up and hike up to the lake again. I had recharged the two batteries I had for the Hypershell, but I didn't even feel like doing that. I really didn't have much energy, honestly. So I didn't want to get, again, stuck in any point where the batteries have run out and my batteries run out and I'm going to need help getting out of here. So that and the very poor mental attitude I was having at the time, I'm gonna go down to town, do some sightseeing, get a few souvenirs for the family to bring back from New Mexico. I came back to the car, went back up to Taos Ski Valley, and opened the windows, got the river sound, and just spent the rest of that day depressed too. The next morning, packed up, left, drove back to Texas. Well, this is it for climbing. Why did I buy this expensive exoskeleton thing? It's obviously not going to get me to the places I thought it was going to. I'll just have to climb much lower peaks. Maybe it'll help. But anyway, all the thought spirals of unfortunateness, feeling sorry for myself. But then after I got home and I was sitting on the sofa, being depressed, and told the family, I can't do this climbing anymore. It's actually just too much for me. Um, I was on the YouTube app, and the thing that came up was this influencer who has a lot of followers who said he had to be rescued by emergency helicopter evacuation from the Everest View Inn, which is on the hike going up to Everest Base Camp, the one that I wanted to do with my brother, but now I can't do. And all right, I'll watch somebody else fail up in the mountains too. I'll have some company. But watching that, I got some more clues to things that I caused myself to fail in my attempt to do that climb, but I only realized it then. And that actually cheered me up quite a bit. So unfortunately, this person having to have emergency helicopter evacuation from the hike up to Everest Base Camp. Well, he wasn't hiking; he flew up, which was part of the problem. I'll explain it in a minute. But his misfortune ended up making me realize, hey, maybe it's not as bad as I thought. So this YouTuber, I'll link to his video at the end of this video if you want to check it out. He he went amazingly unprepared to Nepal to go and have the experience of seeing basically going to Mount Everest, obviously not climbing it. And I don't know if he was going to stay at base camp, but anyway, he was going to travel to that area, but all by helicopter. He's an Australian, so I assume he came from pretty much near sea level, flew overnight to Kathmandu in Nepal, and then early the next morning was taking the helicopter up to the Everest View Hotel. Now, the Everest View Hotel is about 12,700 feet elevation. The lake that I hiked up to is about 11,000, like 11,200 feet elevation. So where he was at was about 1,500 feet higher than where I went to, but still both of us were much higher than where we usually hang out. And we got there pretty quickly. In my case, I drove 12 hours one day and about 6 hours the next day. And I got up to that parking lot at 10,000 feet, coming from 800 feet elevation here in Austin. Um, the next day, yeah, the next day I was at 10,000 feet, jumped out of the minivan, threw on the pack, and started hiking. So I went from 800 feet to 10,000 feet and 10,000 feet and decided I'm going to climb the highest point in the state. He took this helicopter from Kathmandu up to the 12,700 feet Everest View Hotel, and he was going to hike down into the valley to see the town because the hotel is up where you can see the view of Mount Everest. It's on a hill overlooking it. And on the way, well, actually, even before he left, he started feeling funny, and on the way, he started experiencing fairly significant altitude sickness or mountain sickness from going up so high, so fast without taking any time to acclimatize. Now, this can be an issue for people who are doing the trek up to Everest Base Camp. It could be an issue for my brother and I figured, hey, I can't manage the 10,000 feet. How am I going to manage the 12,000 feet there or the 16, 17,000 feet getting up to Everest Base Camp? But the whole thing is, you don't just show up there. You start lower, and then over the course of 10, 12 days, you hike up. So you're going a little bit higher each day. You take a day here where you just stay in the hotel and acclimatize and rest up, and then you go, and it's another 1,500, 2,000 feet. So your body has time to adjust to the increase in altitude. You don't just go from sea level to up here and think your body's going to be okay. But of starting to feel unwell, feeling like he couldn't catch his breath. He said he felt like his lips were tingling and his feet were feeling strange. So the extremities were, and they went and took his oxygen level with the little finger meter, and it was fairly low. I think it was in the 80s when they measured it when he was finally feeling really poorly. Now, when I measured, I'm trying to remember what my oxygen was at when I measured at the parking lot before I started hiking. It was in the low 90s, but even more telling, I think, is this. This was what my Fitbit measured overnight after that night of going up to the lake, coming back down. My blood oxygen overnight would usually be 95, 96, 92. So I realized my number one mistake in this whole thing was not giving myself time to acclimate to that altitude. I should have gone up a couple days, 3 days even, before I planned to do the climb and spend a day resting, spend a day maybe going part way up, coming back down, maybe go up to the lake, maybe not do all that climbing though. I know that ideally you go up, climb high and sleep low, which is good when you have the energy to do that. But so anyway, I'm going to tell you my number two mistake. But my number one mistake was not giving my body time to adjust to the altitude. And seeing that YouTuber have that experience at the Everest View Hotel made me realize I was having that experience at Williams Lake. That leads me into my number two mistake, which was doing half of the whole climb the day before I intended to do the climb. A little bit of warm up is good, but I know my limitations, and I know that to do a climb like that one of 8 miles round trip and 3,000 feet elevation gain, that's going to wipe me out for a week. I mean, I'm going to have to take it easy for a week after that. I can certainly drive back home, but in terms of going and doing a lot of physical exertion, no. And so it was a mistake to go and do half of the whole thing the day before I intended to do the whole thing. Some people can do that. I just don't have enough stamina and resilience. I got one shot at it. So I got to save up my energy for that one shot and not do this practice climb. That was the second mistake that I made. Third mistake related to that wonderful night of 6 consecutive hours without having to wake up and pee. Well, why was I not peeing? Because I was dehydrated. Now, I think I had been consuming sufficient fluids while I was driving up there. I don't remember real clearly. Um, and I brought 2 or 3 1 liter bottles with me on the hike up to Williams Lake. I had planned to actually stash 1 or 2 liters off the trail somewhere for the next day. But when I got back down to the chairlift after doing the 5 miles round trip and had a little bit more water, I looked and I'd consumed maybe 200, 300 milliliters of water. At altitude, you get dehydrated faster because of the altitude, but also that mountain air is very dry. So every time you're exhaling, you're blowing out more moisture. I didn't keep up on my hydration, and I know better because I've watched YouTubers, I've watched climbing shows, and the guides force you to stop every 45 minutes and drink more because they know you're going to need it. I didn't make myself do that. I ended up dehydrated, and that was probably part of the fatigue I felt when I got to the bottom. Reason number 4 for my failure, going along with fluids, the solids. I brought with me 3 tangerines. That's what I took to do the Williams Lake hike, which was half of the whole thing I was planning to do. Now, I had a whole bag of snacks. I had the nuts and I had the dates and I had the berries and I had a whole bunch of stuff that I was saving for the day of the hike. So I didn't take it with me. I just grabbed a few tangerines, threw them in the pack, and started up. And I did eat those along the way going up. I shared one with a fella coming down who looked like he could use a little rejuvenation. But I had nothing when I got up to the top. I was thinking I would sit and eat something, drink and eat. I had nothing to eat, so I didn't bother to drink. I just packed the stuff up after recording a little bit and started back down. And then I had nothing all the way down. So I didn't have any calories going in. I think I started climbing around 3. I probably eaten around noon. So my glucose had probably gone up and was down and was, back near baseline. And I just wasn't putting any carbs in to fuel me. Number 4, don't leave the snacks in the car. They do you no good there. And the 5th reason for my failure was it was really psychological, but it seems like it was a technical one. I had my Hypershell with the battery. When you buy it, you get the one installed and they give you one extra. Each one can take you up to 10 miles if you have it on the lowest assist setting. If you have it on the highest assist setting, which is what I did the second half of the way up and all the way down, I had it on maximum. You get about 2 miles out of it. That's it. And then it's just something you got to carry after that. What really got me mentally was the thought that, okay, maybe not. I have enough battery to get up to the top, but I definitely don't have any more after that, which means I've got the 4.5 miles coming back down with no assistance. And again, it doesn't really, I can't find that it helps in the stepping down, but it does help in making you take the steps. Once you get going, it keeps kicking your legs out in front of you. So, all right, find a place for that foot. Let's keep going. Without that, it's real easy to say, I'm tired. I'm just going to curl up here for a while and take a nap. So, what can I do about that? Buy more batteries. Hypershell doesn't mind if I choose that solution. So, let's see. I'm going to do 8 miles. What if I'm at maximum assist? I need 4 batteries. So, I've got to go buy 2 more batteries at between $100 and $120 each. They weigh about a pound each. And is that going to be enough? I mean, that's 8 miles, but that's like the minimum. Maybe I need it. And so I'm going to end up with a backpack full of batteries for the Hypershell. So Amazon's having their Prime sale today, the last day of it. And I saw a really good deal on a very compact power bank, weighs about a pound and a half, but it has enough charge in it that I should be able to charge up those batteries. I should be able to get 4 charges out of it. So this little pound and a half thing, that's $75, will give me the if this all works right, will give me the equivalent of having 4 extra batteries. And the Everest Base Camp trek, I don't think they do more than 8, between 5 and 8 miles most days. But the places that you stay along the way, like the Everest View Hotel, they have electricity. So Everest Base Camp climb, you're still a bucket list possibility, and that's good enough for me for now. I am gonna give it another go with one of these higher peaks over 10,000 feet, maybe a little closer to fall. But yeah, just, 3 weeks ago when I was trying to climb, I thought the climbing stuff is over, but I realized through a series of mistakes that I made, I pretty much caused myself to fail with that. Now I fix all those things, I give it another go. I still may not be able to do it. I accept that. But for now, the dream is still alive. If you'd like to find out about the Hypershell or the power bank that I went with for charging those batteries up, I'll link to both of those down below this video. So I'll see you out there on the trails and on the next review.
There are so many choices and you don't want to stress. You want your health food at home, receiving only the best. That's what we're here for, we give honest reviews. Paris TX.